Who would be the audience for your media product? My target audience is people in the age range of 13 to 25. However, I will also have a secondary audience of parents I'll also need to appeal to. It's because of this that I'll need to keep out words that may put off the parents purchasing my product for their children. I'd also need to keep out any nudity from my magazine. This said, though, I'm also going to be targeting specific people within that age range of people that like rock music specifically. In what way does your media product use, develop, and challenge forms and conventions of real media texts? For my cover, I decided to follow most of the common conventions that I found on both the Billboard and the Kerrang magazines. I only really took two things from the Billboard cover, and that was the way that the model was covering up part of my masthead, and then the model was also leaning towards the reader out of the page as to give another element to it, also to make it slightly appear 3D-ish. I decided to follow most of the common conventions that I found on the Kerrang cover, such as the addition of a menu bar and making sure that all my text was of all the same font and size. However, I also decided not to follow some of the conventions that I found on that page, and that was that it had most of the information, such as the sweet spot, on the right hand side of the page, but I decided to put it on the common location that is found in magazines on the left hand side of the page, in order to stick with standard magazine conventions. In terms of the image, I decided to go slightly with both of the Billboard and the Kerrang one, of having really high quality images that were easy to see, and have the color palette also match. So my masthead was white, same color as the guitar that he was using. On my contents page, I decided to follow the common conventions that Kerrang had, because of the fact that I liked the page itself, however, I also decided to change the layout a little bit, having the main images on the top left, because I wanted to have it as a Z pattern, so people can read from the title and they see the image, and then they go on to the page numbers, and then finally they go on to the things such as the editor's column and any other information such as competitions that were also included in the magazine. I found this common through most magazines, so I decided to keep it in to stick with the common convention. After looking at most popular music magazines, I decided to include the editor's column in the contents page due to it being very, very popular in almost every magazine I looked at. It had an editor's column of a small little bit of information about the magazine. Just to make sure, I decided to ask my target audience on my SurveyMonkey that I did to just make sure that that is what they wanted to see. Lastly, I had to move on to my feature article. I believe that it follows most of the common conventions of most music magazines. I mean, most of the ones that I looked at had the image filling the entire page, but some only had it filling 3/4. I decided to go with the one where the image fills the entire page. When it came to the actual typography on my feature article, I needed to make sure that everything was highly similar to most of the common ones, but not too similar that they didn't quite fit. So for this reason, I decided to go with a more Q&A styled feature because of just how I found it was more common to see that, and specifically because my article was about a person who just won the X Factor. I thought the people would more want to see an interview rather than just a feature article on their background and what they did. How did you attract and address your audience? I found my audience mostly through social networking such as Facebook. Due to me being small, I decided to appeal to people that I knew already and knew that'd be interested in it. Such as I posted a link to some images of my magazine on Facebook, like rock fan sites, and just saying, hey, just look at this and see if you like it. And then when I got some feedback on it, I decided I'm gonna go for an independent publisher other than going something such as IPC Media, who already have big magazines. I decided to stay small but not like small, so just release it by myself. That way I get all of the profits from the magazine selling, in which case I can put it into new ones if it's successful. What have you learnt about technology in the process of constructing the product? Mostly I improved my knowledge of my Photoshop skills, as I had small knowledge of how to use Photoshop properly, but I didn't have very much. So I mostly was able to improve that. Quite a lot actually. I learned such as how to edit specific things, how to change effects, and how to make sure that the layers all fit correctly. I also learned that even if the camera wasn't able to take the image of super high quality, I would be able to make sure that it was decent enough, as I'd be able to edit the contrast and brightness and coloring in Photoshop itself. Looking back at your preliminary task, what did you feel you have learned in the progression to your full product? I feel that I've learned mostly how to lay out the page correctly, as in my preliminary task, it wasn't quite right. It didn't quite fit, in my opinion. I think this was mostly because I didn't have a full understanding of exactly how to lay out a magazine, but also I didn't exactly have a full understanding of all of the things I could do on Photoshop at the time. My image on my preliminary task was also of pretty low quality, and due to my limited Photoshop skills at the time, was also very poorly edited. My preliminary task, however, did help me to understand the basic layout laws, such as laying things out in a Z pattern and keeping color contrast, such as having a white masthead when the model is wearing a white t-shirt, for example. I did carry this over to my full product where I used a 3-color palette based upon the model and what they were wearing at the time. Before I decided to follow these common conventions using 3 or 4 colors, I also decided to just ask my target audiences to make sure that is what they wanted to see, a connection between the image and the typography itself. Another thing that I definitely learned was that you have to put some typography on the cover. You can't just have the image and then just a headline. You have to put some other things that are also included in the magazine, such as other features and such as competitions that can also grab the attention of any buyer or reader. in order to just not have your thing as boring as just, oh, this, just having one feature.